Hey everybody, Mr. Eric here. Welcome back. Today we're going to be talking about DACs and how much DAC do you need and do DACs matter? So you can see I've got kind of a range of DACs on the desk here, and I've been experimenting a little bit lately with just trying to figure out do DACs matter? Some people say they matter, some people say they don't matter. Or as long as you got one that measures decent or doesn't have too much distortion, doesn't matter. So I guess I'm trying to figure out the question for myself as far as just what makes sense for me for what kind of a DAC should I have and how much should I spend on it. So I've got I have no definitive answers for you. I can just tell you my experience with it. And we'll start with just talking about built-in DACs, right? And in this case, for most devices, my personal experiences, if you're talking about just straight out of your laptop or straight out of your phone or iPad or any sort of device like that, motherboard, I do think it is definitely worth upgrading your DAC in that instance. So that's been my experience with it, is I do notice audible differences when jumping from onboard to even something, like the ES100 here. I think there's a noticeable upgrade when switching to something like that. Now, I do have a couple of really cheap DAC options here. This is a cheap USB DAC from Behringer, the UCA22. This is one that, is kind of recommended if you just need to replace something. You just need something to fix your onboard or something like that. That's one that's recommended. This is one for optical. I got a little piece of electrical tape just to cover up the blue LED. These are little $30 simple devices. Again, this is just I wouldn't think of this necessarily as an upgrade as much as just a bare bones, make it work with your system type of thing for each of these two things. I don't really think those are much of an upgrade. After that, so you got kind of that entry level, just get something functioning stage. You're spending $20-$30. You spend a little bit more, then you're going to start to notice a little bit more of a difference, okay? So I think you get up to something this is the Origin G2, you're going to notice improvements over an onboard with this or something like the ES100. And you've got here, this is the SMSL Sanskrit MK2. So this, is kind of your typical $100 DAC. So I think what I've kind of landed on in my experience is for most people, something like this $100 DAC is probably going to be fine, right? I have done lots and lots of testing between, and this isn't even all the DACs I've tried or had. I've tried numerous DACs over the years. Just to list a few more that I've tried Modi 2, Modi 3, I've tried Modius I had for a while, had the E30 for a while, D10, D30, I don't know, I'm sure there's other ones in there, right, that I've tried, plus not to mention all-in-ones like the K5 Pro, the E10K, all those things. So I think once you've got a couple of tiers. Sorry, this is kind of all over the place, but you've got, like I said, the entry level, I'd say $20, just get things working. Going to be pretty comparable to onboard. You've got kind of the next tier up, which would be inbuilt $50. This would be FOLA, FOLA Origin G2, E10K. I think you're going to see a little bit of an improvement there. At least that was my experience. And then you're going to see another little bit of improvement up to the $100 tier. Now, after that, things get less clear. At least that's my experience with it. So I did extensive testing when I got the Modius, and at that point I was using the E30, and this was with the Asgard 3, and I was going back and forth, E30, Modius, into the Asgard 3, and I heard very, very little differences there. Kind of same in that regard. I've got here also the SMSL M300, which I guess you would kind of say is like the upgrade from the Sanskrit here. This one is fully balanced, and this has like AK4497 chip, and this one has the 4493. So theoretically, you should see an upgrade from one to the other, but again, I think that difference is very, very, very negligible. I spent a good chunk of time last night going back and forth from the M300 to the built-in DAC in my Odyssey Deckard. And again, very, very little differences. Is there a difference? I 100% think there is a difference, just to be totally clear about that. But as far as it having like a huge impact on the overall sound, I would not make that leap. Certainly in a blind test, I couldn't tell you which one was which. At least not without lots and lots of effort and concentration. And like, I mean, you would have to be so utterly engrossed and focused. And maybe for some people it's easier, but for me, it's not easy to tell the difference between them. And I also did a lot of testing here with my Mojo, which again is supposed to be maybe kind of like a step up from like the AK chips, because this is like a discrete circuit. Actually, so is the Deckard, is my understanding of it. But so you're supposed to be able to see kind of or hear a noticeable upgrade, you know, from like one of these guys to the Mojo. Not for me, not in any significant way, I wouldn't say. So I guess to boil all this down, right, I think trying to decide between DACs, especially between DACs in like the $100 to $300 range, like once you kind of meet that initial like $100 quality, I think listening to and trying to pick out differences between them is a very audiophile thing to do. Now, not to say that it's a waste of time. You know, maybe you can hear some real differences there. And if that's the case, I don't know, comment below and let me know that my ears are terrible and I don't know what I'm talking about. But for me personally, I think once you get to this kind of $100 level, I would just say pick the one that has the features and connections that you need to make your system work. So I ended up switching from the Modius to like the SMSLs because I wanted remote function, and the Modius didn't have that. So then at that point, you're just going, okay, well, if you don't need remote function, then I think any of those entry-level $100 DACs are fine. Liquid Spark, SMSL Sanskrit, you know, Modi 3 Plus, E30, you know, right? If you don't need balance, any of those are fine. If you need a remote, pick one with a remote that you like the look of. And if you need balance, you know, pick the one that has balance. So I would say just pick the one with the features that you want, and don't stress about the sound too much. If you're going, especially if you're like stressing like, oh, am I picking the right $100 DAC? As long as it's got the features that you want and the connections that you want, and it looks good with your system, like you like the way it looks, I would just say pick it and be happy and don't stress about it too much. Now, all this being said, I have not yet gotten to that next tier up in DACs. So I've been trying to trade something for a Bifrost 2 forever, and I just can't. It doesn't ever seem to come together because people just love those Bifrost 2 DACs. And maybe, I'm sure I'll try one eventually, and maybe that will blow my experience of DACs out of the water, and I'll think that it's a huge difference. I kind of have my doubts, honestly. I kind of have my doubts. So for me, I would say this is the level of importance that I would focus on, assuming you've got enough power for your amp, which I think any of the $100 amps are probably fine to get you started. So headphones matter the most. Like that 100%, I think it would be very difficult for anybody to argue otherwise, that your headphones are going to make more difference than anything else. So I would start by finding a set of headphones that you enjoy, and starting off with like one of those stacks, you know, $100 DAC, $100 amp, somewhere in that range. And I think then just try different headphones would be my suggestion. Is try different headphones, pick the one you like, and then maybe experiment with like another amp would be my next thing. Because certainly trying the different solid state amps that I've tried and the different hybrid tube amps that I've tried, and I'll link those somewhere here, somewhere down in the description too, if you want to go check those out. There is noticeable difference between all those amps, definitely. But then lastly, you know, the DAC is where I would say to spend your money next. So for me, it's headphones, amps, DACs. Again, maybe once I get into that $600-700 R2R, Bifrost, Socorus, DACs, like once I get to try one of those, maybe I'll change my opinion. But as of right now, that's my thoughts on DACs. Do they matter? Yes. Are there differences? Are there differences? Yes. Is it night and day? Certainly not. And is it something to spend a lot of time stressing and worrying about? Well, I guess that's up to you. But for me, I don't think so. So I'm just gonna stick with the DACs that work for me in my system, that I like the look and function of, and I'm just not gonna sweat it too much until I can pick up one of those R2R or Bifrost or whatever for a decent price. Again, what's your opinion? Drop it in the comments below. Let's have a little discussion about it, or weigh in for anybody else that's trying to figure this out for themselves. I do appreciate you tuning into the channel. I appreciate you taking your time to watch and contribute. Please consider liking and subscribing to the channel if you want to, hear and be involved in more of these discussions. Until next time, have a good one.